Back in 1999, when Christopher wasn't even dreaming of working with Warner and was enjoying the meager success of his first film, the studio was preparing a reboot of the Batman franchise. Darren Aronofsky was to direct, Clint Eastwood was to be invited to play Bruce Wayne, and Frank Miller, who had authored a series of Batman comics, was to write the screenplay. The script included a homeless Bruce Wayne and an Alfred, who was a black auto mechanic, Big Al for short. The story itself was to take place in Tokyo. This flight of fancy scared the big guys at Warner and blocked the script. Aronofsky left the project to film Requiem for a Dream. He was supposed to be replaced by the Wachowski sisters, and they even worked on their own version for the piece. But then they decided to focus on the sequels to The Matrix. When Christopher came to the studio 6 months later, with his vision of the Batman universe, it caused the studio to entrust the project to the ambitious novice. The director wanted to depict Batman realistically and turn it into a noir crime trilogy. In order to adapt the comics to the screen, he needed the help of an expert in that field, and Warner hired David Goyer, whose name was closely associated with the success of The Crow, Dark City, and Blade.
You might like it.
Nolan, Goyer, and production designer Nathan Crowley, who had become friends with Nolan on the set of Insomnia, shut themselves off in Chris's garage for the next 6 weeks.
It was in August in LA in the garage with the washing machines, so we had to take the day off when the cleaner came around because they'd leave the dryers on and get way too hot.
During that time, they wrote the script, developed the visual style, and basic storyboard. After that, David went off to film Blade Trinity, and Christopher finished the script by himself. Since he was afraid of the plot being leaked, he demanded that the executives at Warner have the first read-through in his very garage.
It was very important to me that nobody see anything of what we were doing until it was finished.
Because of similar fears, Nolan to this day doesn't use mobile phones or email. Despite this slight paranoia and strange meeting place, the producers loved his work, especially his idea to remove the R rating from the picture.
Not the youngest kids, obviously. I think what we've done is probably a bit intense for them. But I certainly didn't want to exclude the sort of 10 to 12-year-olds. Because as a kid, I would have loved to have seen a movie like this.
And well, Batman got the green light, and Warner set aside $150 million for the creation of the film. Now the director faced the most difficult casting of his life. The studio wanted Nolan to choose Ashton Kutcher for the lead, but Chris convinced them to not choose a comedic actor for the noir thriller.
Shut up, dude!
Afterward, they auditioned dozens of actors, from young talents like Heath Ledger to the seasoned David Duchovny. Heath and Chris both admitted, by the way, that the lead role was not a good fit, but agreed to work together in the future. Nolan could not decide between 6 options. Goyer's favorite, Jake Gyllenhaal, a suitable match like Henry Cavill, Billy Crudup, Joshua Jackson, or Cillian Murphy, and Christian Bale, who had especially impressed with their acting. The director invited them all to a group audition, where he immediately came to a decision.
Name?
Bruce Wayne.
Bale received the lead role.
Well, a guy dresses up like a bat clearly has issues.
But Nolan was so impressed with Murphy's talent that he offered him the role of Scarecrow, Batman's arch-enemy.
Would you like to see my mask?
Before Murphy, the role was supposed to be given to either Ewan McGregor or Marilyn Manson.
I respect the mind's power over the body. It's why I do what I do.
The search for the supporting roles occurred simultaneously. None of the candidates were told they were filming Batman, since they simply received a script entitled The Intimidation Game. Michael Caine, for example, thought that it was a movie about gangsters.
Anyway.
Caine agreed to play Alfred the butler, only because of his desire to work with Christopher Nolan. The actor was inspired by the young director's talent, and was showering him with compliments before filming even started. His intuition did not fail him, it would seem, since afterward, Michael made an appearance in every film Christopher would make.
Very well.
Lucius Fox was almost played by Lawrence Fishburne, but David Goyer convinced everyone to add Morgan Freeman to the cast, because he had written the part with him in mind.
I think I have just the thing.
Though Freeman was a Batman fan and had read the comics since he was 9 years old, he only found out about the existence of his character when he read the script.
That won't stop a man like you now, would it?
I suppose not.
The character Rachel Dawes was not in the original graphic novels. She was written specifically based on Katie Holmes, who gladly joined the project.
We have the best of the best people working on this movie, so it's like, wow, okay, what do I do now?
Christopher had wanted to give the role of Henry Ducard to Guy Pearce, but no one supported his idea. The actor was considered to be too young.
The fuck is wrong with you?
Then, the creators came across Gary Oldman, who had many similar roles under his belt.
This case is empty.
I really don't know what this situation is about.
It was no surprise that Gary refused, saying he was tired of playing villains. Chris then suggested he play one of the good guys, and the actor agreed without even reading the script.
You're just one man.
Now we're two.
We.
In the end, Liam Neeson landed the role of Ducard, and was glad to play a villain for a change.
Crime cannot be tolerated. Criminals thrive on the indulgence of society's understanding.
There are a few more interesting people worth mentioning. Chris's uncle, John Nolan, played Bruce Wayne's uncle.
The party's over. Get out.
The apple has fallen very far from the tree, Mr. Wayne.
And small roles were also given to stars from Christopher's first films. Jeremy Theobald.
Jesus, the pressure, it's spiking. Right there.
And Lucy Russell.
But he's put Falcone behind bars.
And now the cops want to bring him in, so what does that tell you?
They're jealous.
It took about a year to cast the film, but the preparation process allowed them not to rush, because it took them 10 months just to build a set in the biggest hangar in the world.
When we first started looking at Cardington, I think that there was probably a certain amount of skepticism from everybody, really, because it wasn't a ready-made stage by any means.
Batman's cave received special attention. In previous films, it had been created thanks to a combination of decorations and backdrops. This time, it was created for real.
Jump!
For the first time, Gotham City was filmed not in a pavilion, but outside on real streets. Though the prototype for the city is New York, it was filmed in London and Chicago. Chicagoans were especially unimpressed with the opportunity to see a film in production. The main streets got jammed with traffic for hours because of the Batmobile, which Nolan called a crazy cross between a Hummer and a Lamborghini.
What's that?
Well, the tumbler? Oh, you wouldn't be interested in that.
In order to avoid a collision, it had to move at a very slow pace. Nonetheless, that didn't keep it from getting in an accident. A drunk driver crashed into an expensive piece of set, thinking that the Batmobile was some kind of alien invasion.
At least tell me what it looks like.
Never mind.
Another car of note in the film was the Lamborghini Murcielago.
Nice car.
You should see my other one.
Murcielago happens to mean bat in Spanish. The day before they started filming, Christopher got his team together and turned on Blade Runner. After the screening, he said that's how he wanted their movie to look. In addition, his love for Blade Runner was the reason the director invited Rutger Hauer to act in the movie.
Bill, what's a big shot like you doing in a place like this?
The cameras began rolling on the 3rd of March, 2004. Nolan refused to use a second unit, which most blockbusters use, because he wanted to personally control every shot filmed and only trusted Wally Pfister.
The first week of production was like being thrown into combat. Who did a fabulous job, but we were all kind of thrown into the mud, wind, ice, rain, hail, whatever was hitting us there.
Another one of his unique preferences, minimum CGI. Graphics increased the quality of special effects, but replaced them only a few times. Using a computer, they created the view of the League of Shadows hideout and the bats called by sonar. Every scene that had less of them involved real bats.
Flesh is bad again, sir. They nest somewhere in the grounds.
The main problem with the fight scenes was Liam Neeson's height. During the ninja segment, the extras had to be placed on pedestals, but towards the end of the film, Liam used a simpler technique. Christopher just asked him to slouch. The lead actors performed their own stunts. Only after they finished filming the sequences, they were replaced by stuntmen who were used to film the long shots. As for the fight scenes with Batman, Nolan preferred to film them from the perspective of the bad guys. This resulted in scenes brimming with suspense and fear, where the viewer felt the terror of the villains, instead of your classic fight sequences. Besides, it's hard not to notice that Batman never once actually hits an opponent in the shot. No, this was not on purpose. It was the result of a dynamic editing on the part of Lee Smith, who went on to work with Nolan for 7 more films after this one. Hans Zimmer became another consistent colleague for years after, when he agreed to compose the soundtrack for Batman, on the condition that he could work with James Newton Howard. The composers had been looking for a project to collaborate on for several years, and the dual nature of the movie's main character seemed like the perfect opportunity to them. Every composition is named after a type of bat, and the first letters of tracks 4 through 9 actually spell out the word Batman.
Nice.
So the film was shot, edited, and promoted for a record-breaking $100 million. Warner Brothers bet on Nolan's talent and were not disappointed.
This year, Batman Begins is the Batman movie I've been waiting for and hoping for. It's one of the year's best films.
Your theatrics made an impression.
Sure, the movie only made $370 million, which wasn't much considering the budget, but it got the best reviews of any Batman franchise film ever and numerous award nominations. Wally Pfister was even nominated for an Oscar for Best Cinematography. The movie's strongest aspect is its realism. The plot shed light on Batman's origin, his cool gadgets, the hero's motives, as well as the character and psychology behind the Dark Knight.
Bruce, why do we fall?
By the way, it was Batman Begins that inspired Michael Wilson and Barbara Broccoli to launch the James Bond remakes. Hollywood was amazed by Christopher's courage, which allowed him to make the film based on what he would want to watch himself.
I made Batman the way I made every other film, and I've done it to my own satisfaction. Because the film, truly, is exactly the way I wanted it to be. You rarely hear something like that for a film this big. As an independent filmmaker, I've been in a position where I'm making a film no one will want to see. No one will care if I finish it, so you have to develop your own motivation, your own reasons for doing what you do. You have to be making a film simply because it needs to be made. You're not looking for approval. When you do something you love, you don't question it.
Okay, say action. Action.
Do you like our work? Let us know with your like and comment. Push that subscribe button and share with your friends. If you want to support the project financially, become our sponsor on Patreon or YouTube sponsorship. Thank you.